welcome to Anne's Family Recipe. It's Veterans Day, so today we're honoring all of the brave men and women who have served our nation. Before we get into today's video, I wanted to let you know that my husband is in a band called the Dog Tag Club, and they play at a lot of VFWs in Western Pennsylvania. They write all their own music, and a lot of their songs have a patriotic theme. They just released a new song called American Soldier, and I'm going to link that for you in my description box below. It's a great song in honor of our veterans. You can go give it a thumbs up, comment, let them know that I sent you to go listen, and you can even subscribe to their channel, so make sure you check that out. So today I wanted to highlight my favorite veteran, my dad. He was a naval captain. He was on active duty from 1961 to 1964 on a ship called the USS Wasp, and then he was on reserve duty for 20 more years beyond that. He was commissioned as a dental officer, and he also served as a leader of an emergency station on his ship, which I had no idea about. So as a naval intern, he actually learned both general and spinal anesthesia, and he was helping out with emergency medical procedures on his ship. I asked my dad to tell me a couple stories about his time in the Navy and also to tell me specifically about the food that he ate on his ship. So first of all, the coolest story about the ship that my dad was on was that it was the first ship to arrive to Guantanamo Bay during, well, like at the end of the Cuban Missile Crisis. So he and everybody else on his ship didn't realize what was happening. He said it was quite a scary time, actually. He was stationed in Boston at the time, and the siren went off indicating that everybody had to get back on the ship immediately, and they departed, and they weren't informed about anything that was going on until they were far out to sea. So they were in charge of stopping these Russian aircraft carriers, having them open all the containers on their upper deck and counting all of the weapons, and in particular the nuclear missiles, and making sure that they were removing them all from Cuba, which is crazy. So he was the first ship to get there and to start to do that. And he said that lasted for a little bit, and then their mission was over and they were able to depart again. So a very sweet story from my dad's time in the Navy was when he was a chaperone for a dance that his ship was hosting. And my mom was one of the ladies invited aboard to attend the dance as well. So my dad was supposed to man his post and make sure everything was going according to plan, but as soon as he saw my mom board the ship, he knew he had to talk to her. So he asked one of his buddies to cover for him, and he stepped out of line and spent most of the evening with my mom. And they had a few dates after that, and then they decided they wanted to get married. My dad shared that when you're out at sea for 3 to 4 months, he said sometimes even longer if you're on a submarine, morale is incredibly important because day after day, all you see is water. So he said the two things that they did on the ship to boost morale were movies. He said they watched a movie every night, and they had really, really good movies, mostly Westerns at the time that everybody enjoyed. And the second and most important thing was good food. Evidently, the Navy is noted for having award-winning chefs, and they would actually participate in yearly competitions to see who was the best. And the main areas of competition were soups and main courses and pastries. So my dad was eating very well on this ship. And because they were out to sea for so long, supply ships would actually come and bring them fresh ingredients so that they could have salads. He said sometimes if they were in the area of Bermuda or Puerto Rico, they would get fresh shrimp and really look forward to that. Now today, I'm going to make a couple of recipes that he said were his favorites on the ship. So first of all, he loved eating chili, and he said the cakes were amazing. Every night there was just an array of incredible desserts. So today I'm making my mom's chili con carne, which she said is a recipe she found over 50 years ago on the back of a saltines box, and she's been making it ever since. And I love it. I grew up eating it too. Veterans Day is also special in my family because it's my mom's birthday. So I decided to make her favorite cake, which is chocolate cake with coffee frosting. For the chili, I'm starting by dicing up 1 medium-sized onion and 1 green bell pepper. Next, I have about 1.5 pounds of ground beef in my Dutch oven over medium heat, and I'm using my wooden spoon to break this up, and then I'll add in the diced onion and cook this until the onions have softened and the meat is browned. Once the ground beef is cooked through, I drain any excess grease from my Dutch oven, and I like to use my turkey baster to do this. It's really easy to suction it all out of the bottom, and I just put it into a little bowl off to the side. To the beef and onions, I added the diced green bell pepper along with 2 cans of diced tomatoes and their juices. The recipe calls for 1 large can of whole tomatoes, but I just used what I had in my pantry and it works out just the same. It also calls for 1 beef bouillon cube and a cup of water. So I just combined a teaspoon of this beef base into the water and let it dissolve a little bit, and then as I stirred it around, it incorporated into the broth. And I think this beef base is my favorite ingredient here because it adds a real savory richness to the chili. I also added 1 can of dark red kidney beans that I drained and rinsed, along with a whole can of tomato paste. And then for seasonings, I'm adding 2 teaspoons each of salt, oregano, and chili powder, and also 1 bay leaf. I stirred everything together and then brought this to a simmer. Then I lowered the heat all the way to low, covered this, and let it cook for about an hour. Before serving, I just made sure to fish out the bay leaf. And my mom traditionally serves this over mashed potatoes with saltine crackers on the side, and you can kind of scoop up the chili and the potatoes, put them on the cracker, and it is absolutely delicious. This chocolate cake recipe is probably almost 20 years old. I think it's from Tyler Florence on the Food Network, but you start by mixing the dry ingredients together. So I'm using 2.5 cups of cake flour along with 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of salt. I whisked these together and then set them aside to work on my wet ingredients. I had 1.5 sticks of unsalted room temperature butter in the bowl of my stand mixer, just with the regular paddle attachment, and I added 2 cups of sugar and then creamed this together for a few minutes until it was light and fluffy. While this was mixing, I took 3.5 ounces, which is almost an entire bar of semi-sweet baking chocolate. I put it in a small microwave-safe bowl. Then I popped this in the microwave for about 15 to 20 seconds at a time, stirring it in between until it was completely melted. I set this aside for a few minutes to cool before I added this to the butter mixture, along with 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then I beat that together for a few minutes. Next up, I added 2 eggs that were at room temperature. I added them one at a time and beat the mixture in between just so everything was fully incorporated. And then I allowed the mixer to work for another 3 minutes or so everything was getting nice and fluffy. I did scrape down the sides of the mixing bowl a couple times during this process just so that everything was getting mixed in evenly. And then the last step is to incorporate the dry ingredients along with 1.5 cups of cold water. So I did this in 3 separate batches. I started with a little bit of the flour mixture and then poured in 1/3 of the water and continued until it was all incorporated into the mixture. So for ease, and because I am not very good at decorating cakes, I just decided to bake this in a 9 by 13 inch glass baking dish, which I sprayed liberally with baking spray, and then I spread the batter evenly into the pan. So this bakes at 350 degrees. In my oven, this baked for about 38 minutes. To test to see if your cake is done, you just insert a toothpick in the middle, and as long as it comes out clean or just with a couple of crumbs, it's totally done. Now, I would start checking your cake maybe after about 30 minutes because you don't want to over bake it, but my cake was still jiggly at 30 minutes, so it needed a little bit of extra time. Next up is the homemade coffee frosting, and this is truly incredible. You could put this on a piece of cardboard and it would taste amazing. So I started with 2 sticks of salted butter at room temperature, and I whipped this up with my electric hand mixer just for a minute. And then when I'm making anything coffee flavored, I always have decaf instant coffee on hand because any amount of caffeine from coffee just does not agree with me. All you need is 1 tablespoon of instant coffee granules, and you mix that with 1 tablespoon of water until it dissolves. And then I added the coffee and a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract into the butter. Depending on how much frosting you want to make, you can add anywhere from 3 to 4 cups of powdered sugar, but you definitely want to do it one at a time so it doesn't make a giant mess. You can see there's already a cloud of powdered sugar here just from my first cup. Now, my kids don't like a lot of frosting, so I ended up only using 3 cups total, and I didn't even frost the whole cake. But if you use 4 cups, you'll get a nice thick layer of frosting on top of your 9 by 13 inch chocolate cake. Now, to thin this out, I did add about 2 teaspoons of heavy cream during the mixing process. You can kind of eyeball this just depending on the texture. You don't want it to be too stiff. You want it to be really light and fluffy and spreadable. So you can always add a little bit of, it doesn't have to be heavy cream. You could just use milk, or if you have half and half for your coffee in the fridge, whatever is fine, but just something to thin it out slightly so you can spread it evenly over your cake. What did you do to the cake?
Yeah, I make a hole.
You made a hole?
Yeah.
Was it good?
Yeah.
My final step was to spread the coffee frosting evenly over the entire cake. So I just used a small offset spatula, piled the frosting kind of all over the surface of the cake, and then spread it out into an even layer. This cake is incredibly light and fluffy. In fact, my son Jack took a bite and said it was like eating a chocolate pillow. But if you're looking for like a denser, richer kind of chocolate cake, I have an incredible Nothing Bundt Cakes copycat recipe, and I'm gonna leave that video for you in the description box. It's a chocolate bundt cake. There's sour cream in it, so it's ultra moist, and it just kind of depends on what texture you're looking for in your cake. Either way, that decadent coffee frosting is going to pair perfectly with whatever you choose. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, follow me on Instagram at Anne's Family Recipe, and give this video a thumbs up if you liked my navel-inspired recipes here today. Also, make sure you click on the link in my description box below to listen to the Dog Tag Club sing American Soldier. Thank you so much for joining me here in my kitchen, and I will see you again soon with more family recipes.